So I'll keep you apprised of that.
Apologize, I don't have a packet or anything. I'm traveling back and forth from presentations in Springfield this week, so glad I was able to make it tonight. I think was able to update city council, and I'm sure you've seen some things in the paper here recently, but wanted to talk specifically about the solar project that has been proposed for property around the current Duck Creek power plant. It is an 820 megawatt solar project, which will make it one of the largest in the country. It's roughly an $800 million capital investment, 300 plus construction jobs over a 2 to 3 year time frame. I'm happy to say if you visit buckhartsolar.com, they do have a website up directly related to the project here in Fulton County. There are going to be lots of benefits from the project, and one of the most important is a big boost to the property tax base. So we know through legislation, the way it's been written, I think our county assessor can agree, and Julie, we've kind of gone through some of these numbers, and it agrees with the legislation, so the developers know as well that over the initial 30-year lease of the project, it will be roughly $120 million in paid property tax to the taxing districts affected. As we know, around the Duck Creek site there, a majority of the taxing districts that have been affected by the closure of the Duck Creek plant that's getting some redevelopment going on out there will be directly impacted by this project. So I'm extremely excited for what it means for the county. Over the next several years, there's going to be lots of updates and lots of information to share with you guys as we continue to move forward. I encourage you to check out that website and get a handout in front of you here. Thank you, Patrick, for helping to get that dispersed. I'm happy to answer any specific questions about it. I will tell you the long-term jobs aren't as exciting as you would think with a $800 million project, but it is 10 long-term jobs, which correlates with some of these smaller solar projects being 1 or 2 people. But the property tax revenue is going to be a game changer for not only the county, but the school districts that are impacted. I'll tell you, we've been working on this for about 11 months. So it's still, to this, probably up until this point, hadn't necessarily felt real. It's a very large project. It'll be game changing for the county. So we're doing everything we can to support it, to cut through some of the red tape at the state level as far as the new programs that are out there that will offset some of these development costs for them from a state level instead of a local level. So we're working through all those processes right now, but we'll continue to work hand in hand with them. And I'm happy to say that through this whole process, so Buckhart Solar is the name of the project. The company doing the development is Doral Renewables, and they actually just broke ground last fall on the largest solar project in the country in Northwest Indiana, which is roughly 1,300 megawatts. So they know what they're doing. They're equipped to do it, and they're getting projects done already. Our kind of next step here is waiting for our grid operators and the MISO folks to release their interconnectivity report. Until that point, Doral cannot pull permits through Springfield. So brief timeline, the way it sits right now is they pull permits by the end of 2022. That permitting process takes 11 to 12 months. So in 2023, they would receive those permits and then start construction right after. And we'd be looking at about a 2 or 3 year timeline, but because of the scale of the project, they'd be looking to do 200 megawatts and getting it online and plugged back into the grid as they kind of move along here. So although they'll be operational in 2025, construction would more than likely continue beyond that. So hopefully a short but impactful update tonight. Yes, ma'am.
You're talking pink cells and
Yes, ma'am.
you got that much acreage out there?
Yeah, well, I should say this is completely separate from anything that Vistra's doing, and none of this solar project is located on Vistra's site.
I know that, but have you got enough flat ground or Buckhart? Because that's a lot.
Yes, and you know, some of the conversations and some of the things behind the scenes that are still taking place. The Army Corps of Engineers is very involved because there's some floodplain ground there. They're talking about heights of the solar panels and some other things. So all that is currently being worked on and addressed. And as of about 3 months ago, they were 80% of the way through the 8,000 acres that they needed.
They buy it?
What's that?
They buy the land?
It's leased. It's the way it's written in the legislation, it will be leased land. So it's 30-year lease, and they have over 80% of that now under contract.
820 megawatts, it's actually twice the capacity of what that power plant is.
Yeah, to help try and put it in perspective between Havana, obviously on power plants since my time in Havana and everything that was occurring there during my time there. And between Havana and Duck Creek Power Station, they generated at the highest capacity roughly 870 megawatts combined. To try and put it from a capacity standpoint, I think you have it in your fact sheet there, but it's roughly enough energy to power 150,000 homes annually. Some of the other things that will come along with this, and we'll continue to work on over the next several months, is how this relates back to Spoon River College, our workforce development. We want to be the solar panel technician hub or the one-year certificate county of the entire country, right? A project this significant, being able to plug people right into that, and even if they are going elsewhere, we have one of the largest companies doing these developments right here. So we're going to be working on several things as it relates to that as well.
Great.
You said that the lease, when will we start seeing some tax revenue from that property?
So it would be after it's constructed. Julia, maybe I think Bill did assess it, pay for it.
Yeah, so common practice right now, after they file the solar lease in land records and they come to our office, it's a meets and bounds description. We implement the lease and the GIS mapping the following tax year. Since the improvements have not been made and it's not online as a solar facility, we assess the ground. But most of these are located on farms, so the land that it's on is no longer assessed as farmland and getting that preferential assessment. They're paying on a market value approach until they build the solar panels. Once the solar watt capacity value comes out, the land is included in the total assessment for all of it. But the farmer who actually owns the field and is leasing that section of his property, they are basically given an exemption where that lease is at, and you can see it on their farm card. So nobody's getting double taxed, like nothing like that.
So you're saying they've already leased how many acres? 8,000 acres.
8,000 is what the total project will take. They're roughly, without continuing, they're roughly in the 80-85% range. And some of that, and some of what will help, and kind of touch on what you're talking about, is a lot of that ground out there too is old MSC or Springfield Coal now owned ground, and they've been very involved with it. And that's where the Army Corps of Engineers, some of that floodplain ground they do have, making sure that was part of it, because they have roughly 3,500 acres right there around the course.
So there's not a whole lot of individual farmers that's turned their lease in.
There's quite a few. As far as a 100% number, I mean, I'll be able to share that stuff farther down. But a lot of them have signed NDAs and certain rumblings, but
Yes, I'm too skeptical, but I just think about everything our counties do. International harbors, the last 4 came in and put tires and ships that got dumped. I mean, it's cost the county a nightmare, so I'm always skeptical. If anything looks too good to be true, it seems like it is true. I hope this is not the situation.
yeah, I agree. I agree. I would say, this is a path forward, and it's not because I'm sitting in the seat. The infrastructure exists here in Fulton County, and regardless of how we feel about energy legislation or how we're getting our power, our power bills 4 times the price it should be right now. With all that going on, really trying to focus on that property tax station. I wouldn't be in here announcing it to you guys without the green light from them. Like I told them from the beginning, this isn't something that can come from me as a good idea, or hey, this is a potential project. It has to be green lit by the company. It has to come from the company, because ultimately it's going to affect taxing districts, the decisions they're making, the step downs from Vista, the property tax revenue we are losing. So although nothing's a guarantee, I at least feel good about how it's written into legislation, because the landowner knows what they're getting themselves into, the developer knows what they're getting themselves into, and so does the county and everyone else involved. I say this very often, but I think the state of Illinois did that right, at least from the legislation standpoint for development.
So you're talking to Springfield, but not anybody?
I'm not talking to any of them. I'm working directly with Doral, who's having these landowner conversations and has been for the last 11 months. The energy company that's developing the project. Because it's all private land.
I'm just very confused because the Duck Creek Power Plant was in the Banner Township. And yet the solar is called Buckhart, which is over a township. So I'm real confused.
Ignore the name. I think they like to do that to make it a little more localized effort, but it'll fall into both townships. Because the boundary is not finalized, I can't share that with you yet. That will come, and at that point, we want to really drill down on, of this $120 million in paid property tax over the next 30 years, how much is going to this school district, how much is going here, how much is the county seeing of that, and really seeing what that breakdown looks like. And Raul's going to help us with that as well. So once we have that final acreage, that 8,000, determine exactly who it is, where it's at, and that boundary map kind of outlined, we'll know the exact impact to each taxing district themselves. So stay tuned, because that could shift and move, and the general area is staying the same. But
What about the water out there? There's a lot of acreage in the water.
the cooling pond is still owned by Vistra, and
That's crazy.
as far as the water out there, which do you mean as far as the strip mine ground? Or
Yes, strip underground, Long Lake.
Yeah.
Are you still on the net or?
Um, As far as Doral, they haven't mentioned anything about that. From a development cost standpoint, they'll do everything they can to avoid fill anything in or anything else like that. They're going to use the ground that's usable. So we haven't had a conversation about that directly. And it's an almost $1 billion project. These folks are very well equipped. I'm not teaching them anything that they don't know about development or anything else. So getting information to them, a lot of this they're working on behind the scenes too. They would meet and we're leasing some office space to their forward-facing kind of public relations group. So we're very involved in staying up to date, but some of that's going on behind the scenes as well.
Where's it coming from?
Today,
Where's it from?
Doral Renewables is out of Chicago. They have Doral Renewables all over the country. And you can visit their website too. It's Doral Renewables LLC is the company. And then Good Steward Consulting is their public relations firm, and that's where we're leasing some office space to. I'm happy to say they did hire a local representative, Blake Murphy. He's 22, 23, just coming back from college and coming back to finish his master's, and it's a great fit for a part-time role for him. So happy to retain him in town there in Canton too, and have him in the offices.
Okay, anybody else?
Thank you, guys. I'll be back next month and give you a full quarterly report on the other good stuff.
Thanks, Cole.
Thank you, Cole.
Thanks, Cole. Okay, moving on to proclamations. Fulton County Disaster Proclamation. None of you want it read again.
Motion to approve.
Thompson. Hudson.
Thompson and Hudson.
Call roll.
Bowler.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Duchesne.
Yes.
Duquesne.
Yes.
Hudson.
Yes.
Coomer.
Yes.
Madsen.
Yes.
McCollum.
Yes.
Meadus.
Yes.
Platt.
Yes.
Spangler.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Arnett.
Yes.
Beck.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Next is discussion action for resolution Ella Rennet recognition project for Clayburg. Would you read that, please?
Whereas Ella Rennick is working to earn her Eagle Scout, and whereas Ella Rennick chose as her garden community project the Clayburg Nursing Home, and whereas Ella Rennick had fundraisers to offset the cost of the garden community project at the Clayburg Nursing Home. Now therefore be it resolved by the Fulton County Board that this board go on record in recognition and appreciation of Ella Rennick's Eagle Scout Garden Community Project, which includes landscaping and new benches at the Clayburg Nursing Home. Adopted this 9th day of August, AD 2022.
Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Duquesne, second by Arnett. Okay, now you can clap.
I did? Sorry, Ella. I didn't mean to scare you.
Thank you.
Give me this one. There we go. Hold this up.
Hold it
John,
up
you
for
wanna do a
pictures.
picture? Oh.
Cameraman.
Got to get her in the paper, Doc, and give us a second.
8x10 lawsuit.
Okay, congratulations.
It looks-
Tammy, did you have anything to?
She did a very good job.
Yes, she did.
Okay.
It looks really nice out there.
We were gonna ask Roger about whether or not she collected funds. to
Yeah,
help her.
and that was the next thing was, she paid for a lot of this with her own money.
Right.
So any donations would be greatly welcome.
We've actually raised all the money to pay for everything, but if you'd like to donate, we can always get it back.
Okay.
Well, that was nice. Thank you.
Very good.
Done a really good job.
Thank you.
I think it's awesome that you're
Got 20
also
on
an Eagle Scout.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not easy. And so you're a rare woman. Congratulations.
My last 20.
You're broke.
Wait till payday. You want them to vote on it, Bryce?
Oh, yeah, we better do a vote, hadn't we?
Yeah.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Clark,
Yes.
Duchesne,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hudson,
Yeah.
Coomer,
Yes.
Mattson,
Yes.
McCollum,
Yes.
Meadus,
Yes.
Black,
Yes.
Spangler,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Barry, Bowler.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you want, if you don't have to. Okay, the next one is discussion act of resolution for Gina O'Leary for retirement. Read that one, please.
This one says, whereas the Gina O'Leary has been a dedicated and faithful employee of Fulton County since December 1984, and whereas Gina O'Leary has served as an administrative assistant in the Fulton County State's Attorney's Office since 2009 and previously as the deputy circuit clerk of Fulton County from 1984 until 2009, and whereas Gina O'Leary submitted her resignation to the county effective August 1st, 2022. And whereas Gina O'Leary, through her dedicated work in the circuit clerk's office and later in the state's attorney's office, has been dedicated to providing quality service to the taxpayers and citizens of Fulton County. And whereas it is appropriate and warranted to recognize Gina O'Leary for her service to the citizens of Fulton County. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Fulton County Board that this board go on record in recognition of the work that Gina O'Leary has provided during her many years of employment with Fulton County. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be recorded in the permanent files of the Fulton County Board. Adopted this 9th day of August, AD 2022.
Okay. Motion by Coomer.
Second.
Cooper, second by Barry. Barry.
Got
it. Any discussion? We want to thank her for all her years
Gina
of
here?
service.
Jokums? Is Gina here?
No.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Okay. Call the roll.
Duchesne,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hudson.
Yeah.
Coomer,
Yes.
Mattson,
Yes.
McCollum,
Yes.
Meadus,
Yes.
Platt,
Yes.
Spangler,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Barry,
Yay.
Bowler,
Yes.
and Clark.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. Public remarks, we have one. Oh, I got a couple, two. Okay. No, actually got three. Okay, first one is Joyce Blumenshine.
So I have a little bit of different, should I speak here or go?
You turn up here in front.
It's okay?
Yeah.
Thank you,
Five
Mr.
minutes.
Chairman. Joyce Blumenshine, Peoria, Illinois. I just want to give a little different point of view tonight, and I'm going to talk on a different angle, and I want to give you just 6 reasons why you might think you want to support the Navigator CO2 pipeline, because I talked before why you wouldn't. So here's a couple reasons that you can think about why you would support it, and if you feel real comfortable with that, then anything they ask you to vote on or any decisions you're going to make under action, then it would be easy to do. But if you have questions about why I are recommending you support it, then you might want to hold off and get more information. So the number one reason you would want to support the Navigator pipeline is that if it leaks and your house is within 100 feet or so close and you're sleeping, you'll die really quickly because you won't smell it unless they put an odor in it, and you won't hear it unless there's an explosion. So Navigator, if it leaks, it can kill you, and you won't have to worry about things after that. Or if I'm taking a carload of friends onto Spoon River Drive, and I go down past London Mills and head toward Ellisville, and the line currently as routed is going down that way. If it has a leak and it explodes, which it will, it's no slow leak, it's under really high pressure, it will explode. Then, if my car quits because there's so much carbon dioxide that the engine spark plugs can't run, then we got to jump out of the car and run within about 2 minutes or so. If we're overtaken by the cloud of CO2, we'll die, no problem. If it just kind of creeps in and we can keep trying to run out of it, then we can get seizures, vomit, disoriented, foaming at the mouth, stumbling, or possible other lung damage. So that's one reason. Second reason why you might want to support the CO2 pipeline. They're going to make a one-time payment to the property owners. So the farmers or the residents who have property or the hunting property, they get a one-time lump payment. That is so nice because Navigator will get decades, generations, as long as that pipeline is there. They're going to get the profits every year. So think about that. And if you're running for election, you might have a question on it. But the other thing is, number 3, if in digging up this 5-foot or deeper trench to put the pipeline in the ground, the farmer's soil, topsoil, gets mixed up with the clay or the silt, and they just don't happen to get it put back right, well, the farmer gets a whole 3 years of damages. So they'll get a payment 1 year for crop loss. They get a lower payment the second year, and the third year they get an even lower payment. And after that, well, they can talk to Navigator and they can get a lawyer. So that's another reason. So here's another reason you might want to support the CO2 pipeline. So there's a liability concern to the county. Did you know they're going to drill holes in your roads maybe to check about different things? So they have to drill under your roads with a pipeline. They're going to drill in other places. If you heard about subsidence, which you all have because this is a coal county, subsidence can happen to places where they've been putting in the pipeline. Just think about that. So I don't know what agreements they'll have, but you might want to make a list of questions like road damages, subsidence, and I realize maybe this doesn't make sense now, but you are responsible for the county, so I thought you should think about the reasons you should support the pipeline. That's a lot of them. Now, another one, and this is the last one, and then I'll sit down. So right now,
1 minute left.
1 minute, is that what I'm doing? 1 minute. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The pipeline's going to take all this highly hazardous, highly pressured, high pressure, more than a natural gas, nothing like an oil pipeline, totally different. They're going to put it somewhere in another county, deep in the ground. carbon capture and sequestration. Billions of dollars have been spent on that, and there's ADM, but there's sure a lot of places that have not made it work. And if it leaks there, you cannot whistle and put it back in. Those people are gonna have big problems. So you may not live near where the pipeline is, but your taxpayers, your kids, friends, their citizens do. So please think about all the reasons I've given you why you might want to support it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, the next one is Cindy Arnett.
I got the time, if you want.
Hi, thank you all for listening. I also do not support the pipeline, mainly because it's being forced in on us, and it's us as a body that makes this decision whether or not it's gonna come in. This group is the same group that come to you asking for help against the hog confinement. This is the second time this group has come to you in less than 6 months, begging our county board for help. You need to stop and think about the people who own this ground. And you need to stop and think about they're the ones who put you in your position. It's the citizens here in this county who's looking to us for this help. I do not honestly know enough about the CO2 line to really say, yes, I would support it. I guarantee you that. I don't support it though because the way these companies are coming through. I can also tell you I was cornered this weekend because there's also a wind farm that they're trying to push through our county too. And this group here is gonna be hit with it. So they'll probably be back again asking for help. I don't know how far that solar farm is coming, or not solar, sorry, wind farm is coming, but at what point do we as a county board stand up and say, I need to be here for my citizens? Somehow, we have to wake up and say, this is who we're here for. Are we here for the corporations to run over the top of us? Or are we here for the citizens to put us in place? That's really my questions that you need to ask yourselves before you make your votes. That's really all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Okay, and then last one is April Tatum.
Very much. I'm April Taylor, and I'm here tonight as a fourth generation Fulton County landowner. As Cindy mentioned, it seems like it's or the hits in our area of the county for some reason right now, to express my concern over Navigator Ventures carbon dioxide pipeline. I would also like to point out that we have some other landowners and residents that have accompanied me this evening. If approved, this pipeline would transport 15 million tons of CO2 every year, directly affecting 50 different families owning property and homes in the northwestern corner of Fulton County. In addition, many other residents living near the pipeline corridor could be affected should a rupture send a plume of CO2 a mile or more away from the pipeline break. Sadly, this concern is very real. A rupture in Yazoo County, Mississippi caused a plume of CO2 to travel more than a mile towards the town of Starsha. This caused the evacuation of over 200 people and hospitalized nearly 50. Cars would not run because CO2 displaced the oxygen required to power internal combustion engines. First responders found it difficult to rescue people because their vehicles sputtered and stopped, and they did not have the kind of equipment they needed. Navigator claims that safety concerns are exaggerated, but a few months ago, the Pipeline Hazardous Material and Safety Administration, the agency responsible for ensuring pipelines are safe, announced that they are taking enforcement action against the pipeline company for the pipeline failures in Yazoo County. They also announced CO2 pipelines need more safety measures and improved oversight. PHSMA is now initiating a rule-making process for that purpose, but this could take years. In the meantime, Navigator has filed his application with the ICC, and they could approve the 240 miles of CO2 pipeline that run through 13 counties in Illinois, including Fulton, in 11 months. I know that the Fulton County Board alone cannot stop this project, but the board can regulate it and establish protections for residents if it is approved. And the county board can influence the ICC by expressing its concern over how Navigator's pipeline will affect public safety, roads, impose unwanted costs, and reduce property values. Tonight, I am requesting that we be allowed time at the next board meeting to present information and answer questions that you would need to be more fully informed about this situation. Because what we are asking is that you consider taking the following actions. Number one, prepare for emergency planning to ensure that Fulton County is prepared in the event Navigator CO2 pipeline is approved. Number two, adopt zoning for CO2 pipelines that establish setbacks of a mile or more, unless Navigator can prove that the distances they propose between sensitive land uses where people live, work, and worship are sufficient to protect residents. Zoning also can address impacts to farmland that result from pipeline construction and reduce crop yield and severed drainage tiles. Number three, update public utility permit applications to include CO2 pipelines and incorporate safety measures and required monitoring. Number four, work with the state's attorney to file your objection if you have some objection with the ICC. Find a way to make Navigator pay for the costs to Fulton County that will result from this project. We did not ask for this CO2 pipeline. Navigator's project has few benefits and many costs. It is being funded. It is being funded by taxpayers through huge federal tax credits, and it is solely for private monetary gain. And so those of us that have the pipeline moving through will pay for it at least twice. Once in our land, twice in taxes. That's how it's going to work for those of us that own land. And it won't be this year alone. It'll be years and years in the future, our children and all the others with this being placed on our land. We're asking you as our county board to use the tools you have available to protect us from Navigator's project, which could cause great harm in our county and place lives at risk. Lastly, I noticed that Navigator is listed on the agenda under action items, and we're requesting that you consider tabling any action until the impacted residents of the county have had an opportunity to present their concerns regarding the construction of this pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. We have time to look at it. I get a motion to approve it. Motion by Bowler,
I'll second.
by Beck. Any discussion? Call roll.
This is for the consent agenda, correct?
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hudson.
Yes.
Coomer,
Yes.
Mattson,
Yes.
McCollum,
Yes.
Medis,
Yes.
Black,
Yes.
Spangler,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Arnett,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Barry, Bowler,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Duchesne.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, moving on to the action agenda. Under I move miscellaneous up to the front so we can get Heartland Greenland in and out. So, Alec, you want to come up and start? And I put them on the agenda to give them a little time to do this, and so we're going to try to limit it as much as we can. But so, if you got questions after you're done, we'll do a few questions to try not to overdo it.
And no, and no action being asked for from the company either.
No.
So wanted to make that clear since I was confused too. So anyway, it's a pleasure to be back here again. My name is Alec Messina. I work on behalf of Heartland Greenway. I'm here with Steve Lee, who's the Vice President of Engineering, and wanted to have him here briefly to address some of the concerns that I heard last time and questions I got from the board, but also from previous comment from other folks that are, have understandable concerns, and I understand that there's a real need to have those addressed. Before I hand things over to Steve to kind of talk through some of the pipeline safety issues and CO2 in general, and specifically to kind of talk through some of the issues related to Satarsh and how it's really different than here, I just want to note that I'm certainly happy to come back as much or as little as you guys would like, and to talk through a lot of the questions and concerns and process and timing. It's very difficult to talk through obviously a very large project in 15 or 20 minutes, which we're gracious enough to get. But I will just note that this morning we met with the emergency management directors in District 6 in Quincy, and those are the emergency management directors across the footprint of the pipeline, kind of talking through some of their concerns, walking through kind of the training and emergency plan preparedness that we would work collaboratively with them. We've had conversations with highway engineers, and we understand that oftentimes the highway engineers will work together to develop the road access agreement template so that they can modify. We're happy to work with that as well. We've begun having meetings with local county farm bureaus, and again, just really trying to address a lot of the questions and concerns, because there are a lot of questions and concerns. So I'm going to hand things over to Steve here in 2 seconds. I just happy to chat with you afterwards. I wasn't sure some of the other things you'd referenced before. This is the only project I'm working on. So I haven't been here before talking about any of the hog confinement or anything else, but happy to chat after the fact. But Steve, do you want to maybe kind of talk through CO2 and some of the pipeline issues that we chatted about, and I think we would like to hear at least a little bit about?
Sure. So, as you can tell, there's a lot of passion out there. CO2, it's new to the Midwest when it comes to, we're a lot of the existing pipeline infrastructure is oil and natural gas. However, CO2 pipelines have been around for decades. Backwards. The industry started back in probably 1986 with the Cortez pipeline. That's over 3.5 decades of safe and long-term operation. So as we're building out this infrastructure, there's a lot of new aspects of it that we're trying to come out, perform training, and do some of the research and input from stakeholders, both elected officials, landowners, etc. Try to walk them through and address some of your questions and concerns. When it comes to CO2 just in general, it is a odorless, colorless, non-flammable, substance, and it's heavier than air. And so its properties are a little different than the traditional oil and natural gas pipelines. And so, as we go through, the CO2 pipeline, part of the thing that's the sustainability of the overall system is trying to decarbonize commercial processes, making these ethanol and fertilizer plants more efficient and long-term sustainability for the entire value chain that it provides. Some of the things that we're looking at when it comes to the CO2 infrastructure is Illinois has tremendous geology when it comes to the Mount Sinai Formation. That's why we're looking at putting the sequestration in Christian County, because it has that geology to support long-term sequestration in the Mount Sinai Formation. When it comes to the widening of the pipeline, unfortunately, some of the ethanol and fertilizer producers throughout the Midwest don't have that unique geology. Therefore, that's where usually the safest mode of transportation is pipelines. If you look at statistics going back to 1970 that PHMSA and the Department of Transportation looks at, you're 99.99997 reliable on moving product from point A to point B via pipelines. And so that's as we look at the initial mode of transportation for the CO2 is piping. The second aspect of CO2 is it's in multiple different phases. Right now, the CO2 that's coming out of these ethanol and fertilizer facilities is in a gas phase. And so, we looked at both the pipelines for gas or in liquid. As you add pressure to CO2, it'll become a liquid. And basically, the smaller the pipe, the less impact to the overall community. And so, not only is it the smaller pipeline, it's less power in order to effectively transport that pipe, that CO2. As some of the people talked prior, it is federally regulated. There's over 5,500 miles of regulated CO2 pipeline in the United States right now. Basically, when it looks at the traditional aspects of pipelines and looking at the risks, as we're getting out how we route a pipeline, risk avoidance, risk management, and also getting input back from constituents, stakeholders, and influencers on what are the unique risks here in Fulton County, in Christian County. And so when we looked at some of the initial routing, we were talking about plume sizes and setbacks. The CO2 is regulated by what we call 195, the same regulations that are set forth for oil pipelines. However, CO2 acts differently. And so when you look at how far you set back from residents, high occupancy buildings, nursing homes, schools, those buffers change. And so as we look at CO2, it's the unique aspect is a lot of people think it's just an asphyxiant. It's also mildly toxic. And so when a substance that's mildly toxic is, you have to look at concentration and exposure time. And so as we performed the initial route, we looked at these different concentrations in these buffers to put where the pipeline should originally go. And so that was, I would look, speaking absolutes, because right now in Fulton County, we have about 16 and a half miles of 6-inch backwood pipe in Fulton County. When you look at, that footprint, with the buffers that we're using, as we talked with the EMA individuals earlier, we looked at those concentration buffers to try to route this pipeline to avoid all inhabitable structures on hundreds and hundreds of feet. Right now, as we've gone through, we're looking at around 400 feet is the initial setback from a certain concentration or initial routing. However, some of these ethanol plants, going, I think it's a county and a half up in Galva, Big River is basically the capture location that's going to have 300,000 metric tons of CO2 that will go through this 6-inch pipeline. With the pipeline, we're saying that the elevated pressures, in order to keep CO2 in liquid phase, it has to be above 1,200 pounds. There's hundreds of thousands of miles of pipe, natural gas, etc., that operates well above the 1,200 psi. And so our range is between 1,300 and 2,100 pounds is the overall operating pressure of the system.
So do you use the pressure to store it in the pipe?
Well, we don't store in the pipe. We use the pressure to keep it in liquid phase. And then when it goes into the sequestration, it'll be around 1,300 pounds.
Okay, so if you go to 2,100 pounds, then you've got a lot more volume in the pipe. So I know in natural gas, they do store it in the pipes.
Sometimes. And so, the reason there's a range, you got to have the pressure to move it. And so we'll have the pressure range where the larger that range, the less booster stations we have to include in the system. Any questions or keep on going?
Keep going.
Okay.
We need you to come to the middle though to talk because.
So they can hear me.
We can hear you over here.
This good enough?
Can you hear me now, John?
You need a mic?
Yeah, here we go.
Microphone.
Oh my goodness.
There you go.
No singing.
Okay, and so when we started talking about plume sizing, is that a lot of people are not fully informed with what we look at when we look at where the pipeline is and all the different buffers that we look at when it comes to risk management, risk avoidance. And so as we talk with the certain concentration levels, we're looking at wider and wider bands. Satorsha was an unfortunate incident. That's part of the things that both we as Navigator and the federal government, we're doing our due diligence on right now. We are working with PHMSA in DC on certain rulemakings, but to kind of give a little bit of insight to Satorsha it's a 24-inch pipeline that was transporting CO2 in a liquid, same kind of phase that Navigator's looking at, and it ruptured. And it ruptured due to a mudslide. Basically, the town in that area had a 100-year reign of it, and it caused a landslide that severed the pipe completely in half. Out of over 35 years, it's the first time of an incident of this. And so, yes, it was unfortunate. Thank goodness there was no fatalities. There was 45 people hospitalized short term, and then over 200 people were evacuated. And some of the root cause and lessons learned from that was really about the unique public awareness and emergency response, where the local town of Satorsha didn't know there was CO2. There was traces of H2S in there that gave it a green phase, and so they thought it was a chlorine leak. And so in that incident, that pipeline was isolated within 8 minutes from the control center. But then when the emergency response went out, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what they were looking for, because CO2 is different than natural gas. It's not flammable. However, the H2S exacerbated the issues, and after that initial release, it followed the riverbank down into the town of Satorsha. So as Alec was saying, that's what we're meeting with certain emergency response to try to look at other additional things we can do to the pipeline to improve that safety. And some of that is some of the simplest odorant. There's our captains on the gas side, it's a rotten egg smell. We're looking at unique odorants to differentiate a CO2 pipeline from a natural gas pipeline, garlic or pine needles. All this is in research and development to help aid in that public awareness. The initial thing though is to keep it inside the pipeline where it's supposed to be. So as we look at, the biggest risk of pipelines is third-party damage. And so it's burying it deeper in the ground, 2 feet above it, put damage prevention tape. So as people and farmers are plowing, they'll hit that tape before they hit the pipeline. Outside of that, it comes into training, emergency response, public awareness, as well as looking at some of the geohazards associated with the soils around the Midwest. So, any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, you said that you feel that community preparedness and emergency management stuff needs to be addressed, but what responsibility do you have going into your community to educate them on what to do and what to look for?
That's great, but we bear 100% of that.
But that didn't happen in that little town, or
That's correct.
So, but since then, you always make sure every emergency response outfit knows what to do.
Yes, and so the first thing that we're rolling out is initial CO2 training with all emergency response, that has off individuals as well as any kind that has a mutual aid agreement. And so that's why we're coming through looking at getting all of the emergency responders as well as some of the volunteers to initially get them trained in CO2. What is the unique aspects of CO2? And that's all more on us to proctor the training, pay for their time, as well as, make sure we get some of that involved. Once we train them, then we work collaboratively with them to develop a plan. What is the plan going to look like? And, we have a plan where, CO2 is not flammable. We don't have to worry about putting fires out. There's no environmental hazards because it's in the atmosphere currently. And so the initial plan is evacuate and isolate the system. And so some of the things that we're working with the EMA individuals on is we call it NAV 911. It's like those automatic alerts when you have inclement weather, tornadoes coming through, having a notification to proactively help with some of the shelter in place, etc.
When you have a leak, how do you remove the CO2 after it's escaped?
So it naturally disperses.
Naturally?
And
That
that's
much CO2 just naturally goes back into the atmosphere without causing an environmental problem?
Yes, ma'am. And so, as I mentioned, Satarja, there's a paper that came out as well as the FEMS incident report. The day after they went back and did testing to see how much CO2 was still there, and it was well below the 5,000 parts per million. And so it naturally basically dissipates with, the environment and ambient conditions.
What's it do to them? What's it do up there though?
Well, it depends on which side of the fence you're on. Is greenhouse gas, but it's.
What's it do though?
It's part of the carbon cycle, the CO2. I mean, CO2 supports photosynthesis. That's what makes the corn grow. And so.
Yeah, but not that much. We don't need it.
Right now, it's going up in the atmosphere. Is where it's going. And that's where, as we look at some of the decarbonization, that's why we're trying to keep it from going there and put it down in the sequestration for permanent storage. Yes, ma'am.
You said that one I had first because of a heavy rain and a mudslide. Well, where you're going, there could be a lot of mine subsidence, old dog holes, old commercial works, and none of that's on the map anymore.
Well, and that's another great question because we've done what I would say we try to look at. We minimize the collective impact and done a lot of we spent 2.5 years putting it out together. Now we're coming out with landowners and some of the unique aspects that might not be on any map or any publicly available data. And as we look at even with some of the townships on, where is their next school going to be built? Where is their extraterritorial jurisdictions on new subdivisions? As we try to confirm that we are minimizing that impact and have all those potential threats to the pipeline system identified. Well, some of it's only local information. And so as we reach out to zoning, county zoning, township zoning, and
You
just.
find every old codger in the county, get them ready, lined up.
Well, we'd love to talk to them.
They may be the only ones that know where some of this stuff is.
Yeah, it's.
It's like I said, that's why we're out. We're trying to get as much information. We just submitted our ICC permit so we can have detailed discussion with landowners now. There's a survey authorization, you know, because a lot of the questions we're getting is, what if this happens, what if that, and one, we can't be specific until we have the actual route of the pipeline established. And that comes from some of the feedback from stakeholders, landowners, you know, the road superintendents, you know, all the different constituents and stakeholders along the route.
Well, now, how often or how soon will you know you've got a leak, and how quickly can you get that stopped? So stop putting more in the line, and how often do you check this?
So the pipeline is monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. And Satarsha, which is, I wouldn't say the normal operator, they identified the leak within 3 minutes. They isolated within 8. We're using a different type of system where we have redundant, because one of the things that happened with Satarsha was, as the control room got alarms, they didn't know, was it a real alarm? Was it, you know, what as they implement some of their abnormal operating procedures, they lost some time on the initial interaction, pushing the button. As Navigator, we're looking at redundant systems that will have not just leak detection, fiber optics, redundant systems that would basically really ping an alarm and basically isolate it in seconds.
Okay, we're pushing 16 minutes here. I'd like to wrap this up in the next 4 or 5 minutes. Again.
Sure.
Can I have a question, please?
Go ahead, Mary.
I'm a farmer, and what happens if you have a leak and it fixates the livestock and contaminates the water? What happens then?
So when it comes to water, there is no environmental impacts of CO2 in water. Basically, it's, you know, it's in some of your Coke and Sprite right now. And so there are no long-term effects of CO2 in water. When it comes to livestock, it affects livestock just like it affects humans.
You want to talk a little bit about, I mean, I know we've got just a couple minutes, but the high constant, the HCAs and how that kind of
Sure. One of the
informs your thinking about how it's designed.
As we look at mainline valve, all the different risk mitigation activities we look at is, once we get the defined route, we do what they call high consequence area analysis. That's looking at high populous areas, areas of high density population, prisons, hospitals, etc. And not only do we avoid them by larger buffers, also we look at enhancements when it comes to the actual pipeline itself. Thicker wall pipe, different installation methodologies, and more frequent valves, as we look at trying to minimize that collective impact on the overall system as we get closer to populous areas. So,
okay, we've talked for several minutes about what the risks could be and things like that. What is it going to do for our county?
So, you know, for your county, it'd be the tax, you know, the property tax, as well as if Fulton basically supplies you grain and corn to some of these ethanol producers. It's the long-term sustainability of those plants and the entire life chain of that process.
So to hit the tax real quick. So Illinois is different than the 4 other states where the pipeline is going to be crossing through. A lot of states will actually consider pipelines to be real property, so they tax them as real property, but that's not the case here in Illinois. However, because Navigator, when they were kind of conceiving this project and thinking it through, they set aside those funds to pay for the property taxes when those taxes were assessed. So there is, at some point in time, we'll be wanting to sit down with, you know, the county board and other, you know, however we end up structuring that, to do a kind of a community benefits agreement to have a payment in lieu of tax that would be equivalent to what you would have anticipated from the property taxes that we don't assess here in Illinois. You know, there are some temporary construction jobs. That's not really the kind of the significant benefit that you're thinking about, obviously. The only other thing that I would mention is, a lot of times, and we've seen this already in Illinois, both in Hennepin and in Decatur as well, where these projects are getting built, other manufacturers see that as a kind of a draw, a magnet, because these manufacturers are also dealing with trying to minimize their CO2 emissions. So, for instance, Marquis and Hennepin, you know, when they announced that they were going to sequester from their facility, they 2 weeks later they announced a partnership with a low carbon jet fuel manufacturer who wants to kind of locate in that vicinity to, again, utilize that pipeline and that sequestration storage field. In Decatur, where ADM is getting ready to start its 3rd sequestration project, they have also entered into an agreement with and I forget the name, so I apologize, but it's, well, they bill themselves as a zero emission, which I don't think is entirely accurate, but a zero emission natural gas fired electric generating facility. So it can also serve to draw other facilities as well. And again, that's a hypothetical. That's not a real benefit, but it's happening elsewhere. And as other industries, including the ethanol industry, are really focusing on these sequestration approaches, they're not the only industry. So anyway, I'm talking too long, I'm sure.
But you're saying there will be no tax money from the pipeline.
And so we would make a payment in lieu of that tax.
I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but the reality is, I mean, you can do that or you can not do that. You're not required to do that.
But we didn't
We're
put an
not
agreement.
looking for any tax benefits from the pipeline, right?
Okay, Julie, can you add to that?
Pipelines are not taxable for the state, in the state of Illinois.
Okay, but we'll gladly take incremental taxes.
Well,
Okay.
but I would like to know
Send me
what
that
we're
call.
supposed to
Hang on,
estimate
call.
that amount on, because this isn't, it's hard to value something that's not valuable by law.
Yeah, but that's absolutely an important conversation, and we can certainly take a look at how other states, assess it. I mean, it's. I think Navigator was surprised when they first looked at Illinois that it wasn't as a railroad, miles of railroad, which are taxed per mile. So it's definitely something, and again, that money was set aside already, so those conversations are important.
Okay, take Cindy and
Okay,
then Carl, and I'll wrap
So you're
this up.
saying this money's set aside by Navigator, so Navigator goes and acquires all this property from these farmers, and then all of a sudden Navigator sells out to whoever in Timbuktu. These farmers are still on the hook for whatever happens. And all the promises of the taxes and everything are gone, because another company has it now.
So a couple things. First of all, the easements that would be entered into with the landowners travel not with the company, but with the asset, the pipeline itself. So those payments would still occur. And much like the community benefit agreement would be entered into, whether it's, that also would have to be entered into based on the asset itself, not whoever the owner is.
Well, but there's
Except
also
for one
bonds,
fine
and so.
And the bonds
so
too. I don't
basically,
think that's what you're
as
asking.
we get the certification from the Illinois Commerce Commission, there's bonds for decommissioning activities, damages, all that is assessed and basically is put up with the asset and stays with the asset. Right.
Okay, Carl?
What's the benefit to the property owner? Or what are they gonna obtain from this? One, they're gonna get a big check.
Oh.
As we look, as we went through it, and because we've been hearing a lot of things. Some landowners want payment over time with an escalator. Some people want a one-time payment. Some people want, there's a lot of different things that when it comes to how each individual landowner is want to be compensated. Because what they are getting compensated for is for the easement, which they retain 95% land use of. You just can't build a pool, a house on there. So if you're planting corn, you can keep planting corn. And so there's a real estate, we're only looking for a 50-foot easement coupled with 5 years of crop damage. When it comes to prepayments, which is 250% over 5 years, is what we're looking at. And it just basically help, basically when it comes to land for their farmers, it's sustaining that agriculture and the market for their corn and soybeans. Because if not, some of these plants that basically buy that corn and buy that soybean are no longer viable and would start basically being mothballed.
Okay, can you sum this up in a couple minutes here?
Thank you for your time. I know there's a lot of, it's interesting, there's passion, it's new. As Alex said, we're available anytime. We will be getting out in the communities, follow-up meetings, and if it's county specific or any other, we're happy to talk to anybody about anything. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I wanted to do this I don't know anything about CO2. I don't know how much any of the rest of you know, so I want to try to get as much information as you can. If you want to hear more, let me know. I will schedule more information. If you don't want to hear more, tell me. We'll just let it go. I don't know if it's good or bad. I still don't know. I don't know that much about it. All I know is they're taking CO2 down and putting it in the ground, and like I was telling Steve and Alex earlier, it was on the news that we're having a CO2 shortage, they can't make beer. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on, treasurer's report.
Good evening, everyone. Starting off with the financials for the distribution at the end of last month, we have distributed $33,106,000 and change of the almost $52 million. So we are at 64% collected and distributed in terms of property tax dollars. Friendly reminder, second installment is due September 2nd, plus mobile homes are due September 2nd. Any of your constituents have questions, ask them to please reach out to my office. My team and I will be more than happy to help. Moving right along, we're going to talk about county gen. So we talk about that fund every month. We had a revenue total of $1,405,951.69. Expenses totaled $830,301.38. That created a surplus of $575,650.31. We are currently a little bit over $3 million of a surplus in county general. While that is absolutely fantastic, part of that is, and again, it's fantastic. Part of that is attributed to PPRT. We are getting a lot higher of an amount that was estimated. I'm going to remind you of PPRT, we get 8 allotments or distributions a year. It is factored as an estimate that they give us sometime around August. We should be getting it in the next week or so. But it goes off of the state fiscal year, which is July 1 to June 30th. Our fiscal year is December 1 to November 30th. So those two overlay, we give our best estimation on what it's going to be. Knocking it out of the ballpark. I'm not going to call the state. We're not going to complain. We're going to be extremely grateful for what we are receiving. I'm just asking that while I'm being very enthusiastic, there's no crystal ball to be able to say if that revenue will be continuing to come in that source. So, but when you look at the budget breakdown in county gen especially, just because we have that surplus, a budget is just that. It is the best educated guess estimate, whatever fun word you want to associate with it. You're going to see PPRT is incredibly higher. The income tax, we're doing a little bit better. We should be at, of the 8 months of the fiscal year, we should be at 67%. We're at 87%. Cannabis, local people, we're not getting as much tax as we did last year. So I'm not going to even begin to make assumption as to why. But those
People aren't getting fined, Stacy.
well,
I had to, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna let that one go. So anyway, interest income in terms of I'm trying to keep as much money local, but also invest in the governmental pools locally. We are still, I wouldn't say stagnant because the numbers are increasing in terms of CD rates, but nothing that I can get in the Illinois Fund investment pool or the Illinois Trust investment pool. So I have been moving money around, trying to capitalize the best that we can, because again, that means more dollars. The reason why I wanted to offer the long explanation, and thank you for indulging the time and listening to me. We do these budgets, we do these estimations, we do these guesses. Some of them were on point, some of them we are not. And again, I think it's important to be grateful for what we have. I'm encouraged when you're looking at projects that need to be done, just because we have some money in the bank, that doesn't mean that we need to spend it, but maybe start considering again, getting some money set aside for future projects and allocating those funds while it's there and build upon that. So, any questions on my long rendition of County Gen tonight? No. all these other funds. If you have any questions, I'm not going to go into detail on funds 2 through 5 million which we have, but any questions? Second installment due date September 2nd. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. Okay, moving on to health. Tammy, do you have anything to say about this? Laura told me to go ahead and just pull it, but.
I did send over Patrick a couple of things, that's being distributed on CNA websites and, the girls couple of the girls that were at work are getting calls, come over here, come over here. I pulled each one of them in individually and I talked to them about what benefits they really have. And that we got better benefits than any place in Fulton County. And that it's being looked at. It doesn't mean it's gonna come in. It doesn't mean it's gonna go out. But at this point, they all know that this is something that's being looked at.
Okay. Yeah, I think the problem with most of them, they're young, CNAs are mostly young, they aren't looking at the benefits. Is the problem.
They are not, and that's the biggest struggle. That's what they're saying. We don't care about the benefits. Well, when you get older, you'll care about them benefits.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Roger, for clarification purposes, I am to hold those payroll change notices in my office still and not issue any of those raises, correct?
Yeah. So, I guess, if I can get a motion to table this from somebody, we'll just
I
table it.
can do that, but is that what Laura wanted us to do? Table it?
Yeah, well, she
Wait,
actually, I was in a text with her earlier and I forgot, and she told me to just pull it.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I'll make
but
a
I didn't
motion.
pull it at the beginning of the thing, so we'll have to table it now.
Okay.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Second, Coomer. We need roll. Call roll.
Hudson,
Yeah, we're tabling.
tabling. What'd she say?
Who?
Yes, oh, okay, all right.
Coomer,
Yes.
Mattson,
Yes.
McCollum,
Yes.
Vetus,
Yes.
Black,
Yes.
Spangler,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Arnett,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Barry,
Yay.
Bollinger,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Duchesne,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right, thank you. All right, Highway Nestor, thank you. Right over.
Okay. Want to make a comment, the highway crew has been out and been working, done some hot weather, and they're doing an outstanding job of what I've seen, what they've been done, what they have done. County Highway 15 will be open tomorrow. They'll finish up that last culvert. And County Highway 2 bridge down by London Mills should be open by mid-September, right after Labor Day. That's about all I have.
Okay, anybody got questions? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, Public Safety and Campground, Mary. She's moved on me. Yes, sir, sit over there.
We passed all the claims. After much discussion of campground rates, the committee decided to increase all the sites across the board at 20% for 1 year. So,
That's the camp fees, you mean?
yeah, campground.
I don't think so.
We can do it.
I don't think that.
It's a fee now.
You don't have to vote on it?
Do you have to vote on that?
Well, I don't know, but we can't, it's not on our agenda.
If you do, it'll be next month.
Next month?
So, okay.
Sorry.
Mary, what's the fee now?
They vary, there's,
Here's on my phone.
It's on your
Depends on
depends on what's electric,
Location.
non-electric, if you're by the lake,
and
or,
utilities and all that.
you know,
Okay.
there was,
46.
It's not real high, though, is it?
like an electric side is $880 a year.
Oh. I didn't think that. I did.
Cheaper, cheaper than anybody around.
I don't know if that's through the whole campground or if that's, I know one couple out there that has
Okay, guys, I got my.
Well, they
campground.
don't have a
electric.
problem keeping it full.
She's got the answer.
Here, I got it. Well, it was, the pricing was, can I go by option B? So we went by, yeah. It was like, current non-electric was $550 annually for $45.83 a month. Dry side, $16.60.
You raise it up, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I talk louder? Okay. I think this is the right one. Current non-electric annually was $550 or $45.83. Let me kiss it. Yeah.
No.
I'm sorry, guys. The current non-electric rate was $550 annually or $45.83 a month. Dry sites increased by, let's see, $750 a year, $62.50 a month. That sound right? Lake access increase was $75 a month, $900 a year. I don't know if I got this right.
That's one of the options.
One of the options, that's the
They
right one.
presented to us.
Okay.
Yes, I don't think
The
you done the
$550
percentage.
annually is
Yeah.
what they're paying now.
That's what they're paying now, yes. Okay. So continue. Current electrics was $880 annually, $73.34 a month. Dry sites increase, let's see, is that right, $100 a month, $1,200 a year?
That was a proposal.
That's a
one of them.
proposal, right?
Maybe you could ship that out tomorrow.
Maybe they're, yeah, they look all this crap.
But
Yeah, it was,
basically,
That's price comparison, that was the other thing.
non-electric was $550 a year.
Yeah, that's non-electric, right.
What was the reason for raising the prices?
Probably electric.
no, they pay the electric, they pay the electric on top of their,
The upgrade.
they pay for their electric on top of their
Upgrade, like,
rent.
he needed to do like,
But I mean, you've got had increases in electric, right?
Yeah, but we don't pay that. They pay their own electric.
So they can do the improvements of this.
improvements that's necessary, like the roads, the building docks, the electrical wiring to some sites, they need to be upgraded. Things,
They went up from 30 amp to 50 amp.
yeah, they want to go up from 30 amps to 50 amps because some people have like 2 air conditioners in their campers, or that was the reason. Should put that on the agenda soon.
Okay, well, we'll come back next month, we'll have it
Yeah, I have it
hopefully
all.
straightened out so everybody knows
Yeah.
exactly what,
I'm pretty certain the board needs to approve,
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's
but if we do, we'll do it next month.
next month, okay. I'm sorry, I should have caught that.
They won't go into effect until January.
Yeah, right.
Is that right?
Yeah, but the new rates don't go into effect till like, I think he sends out the letters around Thanksgiving.
January is when
Yeah, but it'll be next
We got
year's,
time to do it.
yeah, it'll be next year's
Okay.
rate.
Sorry about that, it was.
Okay,
And can I say, make one more comment?
sure.
I'd like to thank all those who were involved with the Fulton County Fair during that 1 week. Thank God it was cool, but I just want to thank everybody that was associated with who worked there.
Good, thank you. Anybody, any questions? All right. Moving on, property and court, Cindy.
We really don't have anything to report, so I'm gonna be real quick. But,
Thank you. Have a seat.
Just basically waiting on bids to come in. So,
Thank you.
I wasn't serious. You can talk and go out. Let my mouth open. Okay, P&L, Lisa.
Nothing for action tonight.
Okay. Anybody got any questions? Okay. Finance and insurance, John?
I have nothing, Mr. Copyright.
Why? You guys are sleeping.
Wow.
Community development, Bo.
Same here, I have nothing for board action.
All righty.
Oh, these booze hounds got
Yeah,
all
we're gonna
kinds
move
of-
on to liquor now.
Move on to the booze.
Okay, discussion action for approval of gaming terminal permits. We have five permits that we do for gaming terminals. Goomer?
I make that motion.
I'll second.
By Barry. Any discussion? Call roll.
Coomer,
Yes.
Mattson,
Yes.
McCollum,
Yes.
Nedis,
Yes.
Black,
Yes.
Spangler,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Arnett,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Barry,
Yay.
Bowler,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Duchesne,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
and Hudson.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Next one is discussion action for amendment to the Fulton County Liquor Control. Do you have that?
I do. Whereas on April 12th, 1977, the County Board of Fulton County, Illinois passed and approved Fulton County Revised Ordinance of Liquor Control, known as the Alcoholic Liquors Resolution, in order to license, tax, and to regulate the sale and retail of alcoholic liquors in the territory of the county outside the corporate limits of any city, town, or village. And whereas the aforesaid Fulton County Revised Ordinance of Liquor Control has also been amended on June 13th, 1977, December 27th, 1982, June 13th, 1989, December 10th, 1992, May 13th, 2003, February 10th, 2004, October 10th, 2006, June 9th, 2015, and May 12th, 2020. And whereas Section 14 of the Fulton County Revised Ordinance of Liquor Control is amended, limits the number of liquor licenses that may be issued by Fulton County to 12. And whereas it has been recommended that a portion of the Fulton County Revised Ordinance of Liquor Control, as amended, be further amended to allow Fulton County to issue 13 liquor licenses. Now, therefore, be it ordained by the County Board of the County of Fulton that Section 14 of the Fulton County Revised Ordinance of Liquor Control, as amended, is amended to state the following. Section 14, that the number of liquor licenses issued by the County of Fulton and State of Illinois shall be limited to the number of 13.
Yeah, I should have corrected you, because the committee decided to make that 15.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's recommended to the committee that we raise it to 15 liquor licenses.
You guys know how to party.
Yeah, no, the booze hounds here.
Is there a reason for that, Roger?
Well, because we're raising one, we was gonna raise one because we have one new license that.
It was somebody with
Okay.
a license, yeah.
Lake Bar and Grill down by Anderson Lake, it changed hands. They didn't come and get a new liquor license.
Oh.
It changed hands. It's Rut and Strut, something.
Barn.
Yeah. And then the VR Meats up there, we give them a package liquor license.
Okay.
And this is for A and Bs are all included in this.
Oh, okay.
So she bought the Lake Bar and Grill. I don't know what to pay for it, but she's done about $50,000 renovation to it.
Really?
Yeah.
Or the Anderson.
I'm not sure, I'm not sure if that was enough, but that's.
We're now thinking about.
Quite a big deal.
That'll be dark.
Last time I was in that, I don't know 50,000 was justice or not, but that's okay. But anyway, so we're gonna add one. Well, it recommends the committee that we do 15. That way If somebody else wants to come get one, we don't have to come and amend it again.
So there's 13 issued right now, right?
It will be in a minute when we get to the next.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. There's 13 issued, you're gonna have 2 extras.
Two extras.
Okay.
Get a motion in a second.
Okay, so can I have a motion to,
Yeah.
motion by Beck, second by Coomer. Any other discussion? Call roll.
Mattson,
Yes.
McCollum,
Yes.
Meadus,
Yes.
Platt,
Yes.
Spangler,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Arnett,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Barry,
Okay.
Bowler,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Duchesne,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hudson,
Yes.
and Coomer.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to the next one, which is the reason for that. Discussion action for a Class A liquor license for Rut and Strut Bar and Grill. Motion by Coomer, second by McCullum. Any discussion? Call roll.
McCollum,
Yes.
Meadus,
Yes.
Platt,
Yes.
Spangler,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Arnett,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Barry,
Okay.
Bowler,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Duchesne,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hudson,
Yes.
Coomer,
Yes.
and Mattson.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Now, the last one, discussion action for an ordinance amending the Fulton County possession of alcohol. You have that.
Whereas on April 9th, 1991, the County Board of Fulton County, Illinois passed and approved the Fulton County Ordinance of Possession of Alcohol in order to regulate the possession of alcoholic liquors in the territory of the county outside the corporate limits of any city, town, or village. And whereas it has been recommended by the Fulton County Liquor Control Committee that Section 8 of the Fulton County Ordinance of Possession of Alcohol be amended to state as follows. Section 8, this ordinance does not apply to possession by a person under the age of 21 years making a delivery of an alcoholic beverage in pursuance of the order of his or her parent in pursuance of his or her employment. I think that's supposed to be or in pursuance of his or her employment. If any section, subsection, paragraph, sentence, clause, or phrase of this ordinance should be declared invalid for any reason whatsoever, such decision shall not affect the remaining portions of this ordinance, which shall remain in full force and effect. And to this end, provision of this ordinance are hereby declared to be severable. Now therefore be it ordained by the County Board of the County of Fulton that Section 8 of the Fulton County Ordinance of Possession of Alcohol is amended to state as follows. Section 8. This ordinance does not apply to possession by a person under the age of 21 years making a delivery of an alcoholic beverage in pursuance of the order of his or her parent or in pursuance of his or her employment. If any section, subsection, paragraph, sentence, clause, or phrase of this ordinance should be declared invalid for any reason whatsoever, such decision shall not affect the remaining portions of this ordinance, which shall remain in full force and effect. And to this end, provision of this ordinance are hereby declared to be severable.
Okay, before we have questions,
Yeah.
Yeah. I get a motion and a second. Motion by Bowler, second by Thompson. Okay, let me explain a little bit if you're not exactly clear what it is.
Yeah.
Marilyn, I could never say that name. Marilyn. She runs the Weematech, thank you. Weematech Country Club. Okay. She called and wanted to know if we could amend our ordinance to allow 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to serve in our country club. Because she has kitchen staff that has slow times and then they're busy in the bar and they could help out. I didn't think you could do that. I didn't think 18, 19-year-olds could do that.
State of Illinois with that.
Well, and that's what, and so she gave me the number of the guy at the State Liquor Commission to call, and I called Dr. Cody something. And he's like, yeah, he says, hey, I says, is this something recently we passed or what? He says, no, it's been like that since 1934. I didn't know. It's just our ordinance stops it. So, that's what it is. Justin?
I'll just point out that although that language seems a little goofy, that language, other than the on, which should be for, that's the language that's in the Illinois code.
Yeah, that's.
So basically, our ordinance as it was written in 1991 was more restrictive than what the Illinois code allowed. So basically, what I did was amend our ordinance to conform with what the state law is, which would allow kids to like.
Who was your motion?
You're at a barbecue, dad says, go get me a beer. Well, technically, they'd be violating our ordinance if they went and got a beer and brought it to their dad. That's in accordance with a parental.
We lower that age to about 14.
Or in furtherance of your employment, it allows, a 19-year-old waitress to go up to the bar and carry the margarita from the bar to the table. Our ordinance didn't allow that before. But basically, what that law or what that ordinance states now is what the state law says.
What would happen if, say, a family were boating in Winterthur and they sent an 18-year-old in a car up to the clubhouse to buy it, to get a 12-pack, their parents paid for the membership and drove it back? It's driving the transport to the parent, right?
Can't do that.
That's Isn't that what it is?
That's the problem.
No, someone under 21 still can't buy it.
No, the parent would buy it. I mean, if you have a membership, like.
Yeah, but they're not, they can't send somebody up to the bar to get it. The bar can't sell it for them to take it to anybody else.
Okay,
They still can't do that.
okay.
You still have to be 21 to have any money and give them.
By rights, even though they're allowed to deliver it, they can't cash you out or anything like that, or they can't buy it, they can't buy it or anything like that.
No, they can, I mean, whoever's attending the bar, if they're 18, 19 or 20,
They can
still,
deliver it
they
to
can
the
still give
table.
you the beer and take the money and everything.
They can cash it out and the whole works.
But they can't sell
That's
it,
the same.
they still can't sell it to somebody that's under 21.
Right.
And if they do, then they're liable, the bar's liable,
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying they give it to the person, they did sell it to them. They didn't sell it to the parent. Because what I'm saying is the parent called in and said, and you're the bartender at Winnetka, hey, put 12 on my tab. My son's coming to get them.
Nope, can't do it.
Okay, that's
Nope.
what it is.
The bartender's gonna be having a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't guarantee the person.
If I was 16 and called up, said I'm my dad, put it on my tab, and I walked up there, I mean, they could be a problem.
She can't serve you when you're under 21 years old. I don't care who called.
Well, it's a training for parent.
And
You
this,
can't deliver you can't deliver alcohol. If you're under 21 years old, I'm a bartender. I don't care who called and said, hey, I want a 12-pack. I can't give it to you because you're under 21 years of age.
Is that right?
Correct. And illegal trans is open alcohol in the field. It's not.
Right.
because I talked to Cody and like, kids, 18, 19, 20-year-olds can drink in their house as long as the parent or guardian is there. It's legal for them to do that.
I didn't know that.
I didn't.
Why, if this law has been in effect this long, why is stores still saying that anybody under 21, you know what I'm saying?
And I asked him about that because I said, I go down here to the store.
And they have to have somebody else that's old enough.
And I get up there and they have to have somebody else come in. And check.
Store policy.
Well, maybe they're under 18.
Is that a store policy?
They could be under, but he said more likely it's a store policy or it could be a city ordinance.
Okay.
So that's where it is. So, look, like I said, you got Lake or Weeman wanted to get this changed. It's good. Or not change it for just them. I mean, it's for anybody to count. All the bars can do that.
As long as they're just serving alcohol at their establishment. Is that what you're saying? I mean, it's in their job or.
I know it's
Yeah, well-
How's the city do it? How's the city can't do it?
Yeah.
How's the city Lewiston do it?
I don't know what their ordinances are.
He said it's legal in the
The only thing this will affect is the ones that we have liquor licenses with.
Yeah, the 13 we have.
And actually, it would eliminate about 4 or 5 of them package liquors, they still couldn't. Well, they could still sell it to some drink 21 though, yeah. So, but- okay, anybody else got any questions? Call roll.
Vetus,
Yes.
Black, Spangler,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Arnett,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Barry,
Yay.
Bowler,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Yes.
Duchesne, Duquesne,
Yes.
Hudson,
Yes.
Coomer,
No.
Mattson,
Yes.
McCollum.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Tammy, did you have anything else?
No.
Okay. I had, you didn't use that earlier, I had muted, I'm not sure.
Is there executive session?
No.
Would you like a motion?
Okay, yep. Motion by Duquesne,
Second.
second by Thompson. To adjourn. Roll call.
Black,
Yes.
Spangler,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Arnett,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Barry,
Yeah.
Bowler, Clark,
Yes.
Duchesne, Duquesne,
Yes.
Hudson, Coomer, Mattson,
Yes.
McCollum,
McCollum.
McCollum,
Yeah.
Vetus.
Yes.
You are adjourned. You are adjourned, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thanks for coming.
I'm trying not to sneak up on you.